So you might be thinking, Hannah, I've been doing the healing work. I'm working on my trauma, but how do I know that it's working? How do I know that my trauma is actually releasing? And this is really a great question that we are going to be addressing in today's video. First of all, assalamu alaikum. If you are new here, my name is Hannah. I am a PA who practices medicine, and I'm also a trauma coach. I work with Muslim women from all over the world to heal and integrate their trauma and regulate their nervous systems. If you are a Muslimah who is interested in this work, you are looking for it, then go to the link in my description below for you to learn more about how you can work with me. Now, if you are a longtime person who has been subscribed to my channel, then you know this is a different setup. But inshallah, there's a reason for that. I'm going to be sharing my screen to help you guys learn about today's topic. All right. So let's start off with a very basic concept when it comes to trauma work or trauma healing. And that is the understanding that trauma is stored in our body. And when I say that, this is not some woo science. This is not a theory. This has been proven. This has been proven on brain scans and body scans. Well, brain scans because our brain has parts of it that are associated with different parts of our body. For example, the fact that I can move my hand up here is a result of neurons firing in my brain telling my hand muscles, hey, go ahead and contract so Hannah can move her hand up. The thing about trauma is it lives and stores itself in different parts of our body. And so because of that, we will notice that when we're doing our trauma work that we will have certain reactions to it in our body. So how is trauma released? We'll start off with the physical release. Trauma can be released physically. Now, what does that mean? I want you guys to use this metaphor. So I want you to think of when you are starting off in the gym, lifting weights, you might find that your muscles get really shaky and quivery very quickly. And it can be sometimes very hard to get a fluid movement in, right? It's hard to get your muscles to work that you want to. What's the reason? If you haven't been using those muscles, it takes a while for the muscles to learn how to start working together and how to exert and burn enough energy to make the movements as fluid. And part of it is also actually the nerve connections to the muscles need time to learn how to fire appropriately. The same thing happens when it comes to our trauma work. And so our nervous system gets so used to holding trauma in our body, and it has certain physical repercussions. We might find ourselves always feeling tight. Your shoulders might feel tight. Your neck might feel tight. You might get low back pain. Maybe you find it hard to take a deep breath in, right? These are all physical responses to our trauma. And for the first time ever, you are interrupting that normalcy. And our nervous system loves normalcy. It loves sameness. And when you're doing the work, you're trying to show your nervous system, hey, we don't have to react physically as strongly as we normally do. We can actually loosen that up. Well, the nervous system needs time to figure that out. It needs time to be able to feel safe not being so tense. It needs time to get used to being able to take a deep breath. And so you might find that there are certain responses the nervous system shows as it is releasing trauma through this work. And one such example is you might notice that you start having some shaking. Maybe you notice some twitching, your eyes might twitch, or some quivering of your muscles. You might notice some a sense of like electricity in your body. Now, it's also very important to take note that it might be that the trauma is releasing, or it might be that your nervous system is actually getting overstimulated. So it's the opposite. The nervous system is trying to make the trauma response stronger so that you don't release it. All of that to say is that it's really important to work with someone who understands trauma, who can help you tap into a physical release rather than dysregulating your nervous system further. But if you find that, you know, the places you have tension are starting to move, you're starting to notice that there might be some shaking, but it kind of feels good, then that means you're having a healthy physical release of trauma. Now let's move on to an emotional release. Here's the thing. For many people who've experienced trauma, they learn that emotions are not safe. As an example, if you were someone who grew up in an abusive household as a child, and you found that every time you complained, got angry, or cried, you were yelled at for it, you were attacked or hit for it, then your nervous system learns, okay, we need to stunt this emotional response. We need to make sure that so-and-so doesn't cry, because if he or she does cry, what's going to end up happening? You're going to get hurt. And your nervous system cares about, or your autonomic nervous system cares about one thing, which is survival. Now, when you're doing the work of integrating and processing your trauma, ideally with someone who is trained in this so you don't end up getting re-traumatized, your nervous system starts to feel safe again. It starts to realize we don't need to, again, mount all of these responses. We don't need to suppress the emotions anymore. And what can happen as a result is you might have an emotional release, meaning for the first time ever, these emotions get to take center stage, and you can show the emotions without the fear of a consequence or repercussion. And so this might look like crying for a lot of people, even if you've not cried before. I actually think about one client who I was working with, who I absolutely love working with, and she had a lot of childhood trauma, and it took us some time to get there. But subhanAllah, what ended up happening with her was, despite many, many, many years of her blunting her ability to cry, not being able to cry, she finally was able to cry. And that was when I knew that we had finally done the work of integrating her trauma, is because she was able to mount the response that her nervous system had suppressed. And that is good. That is actually good. Oftentimes we don't think about people crying as something good, but in this circumstance, it is great, because it's telling us that the trauma is releasing and the nervous system is starting to learn other ways to deal with the pain instead of just suppressing the emotions. You might also find a lot of anger, and this can be really off-putting for a lot of people, because very often we're taught you can't get angry. There's this narrative that a lot of Muslims have been taught where it's like anger is a bad thing. And that's not true. While there are a hadith about the Prophet ﷺ advising a man to not get angry, and we know that anger should be something that we modulate and don't allow our anger to be a reason that we do something haram, there's also a scholar who had mentioned that a man who does not get angry is a donkey. There is actually an understanding that if someone is speaking ill about Deen or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Prophet ﷺ, we should feel angry. That it is a sign of ghira, or protectiveness over our faith in our Rabb, in our beloved Prophet ﷺ. Anger is an important emotion. And when we are forced to shut it down for so long, when we're doing the trauma work, that anger can come up. And a lot of my clients have felt this way, where one of their trauma responses for so long was just to be the one that kept the peace, people pleaser, or don't cause any issues. And then when they start doing trauma work, they start to feel this intense anger, and they get really nervous. And there's no reason to get so taken aback by it, because it's not a bad thing. It is, for the first time ever, your nervous system feels safe enough to bring that anger up, and now we have to do the work of properly processing it and allowing it to move through you. Okay, so that's the emotional release. The last one is our spiritual release. The spiritual release is so absolutely beautiful, and it is a reflection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy on us. And it is not a coincidence that the spiritual release is something so beautiful, because there is an understanding, even in the Quran, of how difficult grief and anxiety and fear is on us. In fact, one of the most common referred to blessings that a believer, a true believer who's attained Allah's mercy, gets on the day of judgment and in Jannah, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow them to feel fear or grief, right? And this is something that is so profound. And so a spiritual release in this world looks like when we've done the work of trauma and we find ourselves having a stronger sense of peace. And in fact, we found ourselves having a stronger, more beautiful relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no point, truly, I almost question, what is the point of healing our trauma if it takes us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is why I use an Islamic framework in my coaching when I'm working with clients. It's because I want to make sure that as we are doing this work, we don't abandon our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We allow it to be the foundation of the work that we're doing, healing our trauma. And so that's a spiritual release. We learn how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from not only a place of desperation, sadness, hurt, pain, anxiety, loss, but from a place of peace and love and abundance and gratitude and connectedness and joy, right? Many of us might not have experienced that second one, but we can, when we do the work to heal our trauma, enter into that place. And that's really, really powerful. There's actually a verse in Surah Al-Hajj where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes people who worship him on an edge, the way it's described. Essentially, when things are going well, they are happy, they are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when things go wrong, they find themselves in a bit of distress. They completely lose track and find their iman slipping away, and they become just desperate and reckless and angry at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't want that to be our situation. That's not healing. That's actually finding ourselves more trapped and engulfed in a different type of trauma, which is our own spiritual trauma. So we want that spiritual release. And the way to attain that is to always make sure that you are rooting in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are connecting with his book, you are doing your fard salah throughout this pain. Don't ever let pain be a reason that you step away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are constantly making dua, that you are expressing gratitude to him. And again, I integrate a lot of this work into the coaching that I do with different ladies. So that is the 3 different ways that trauma is released. That is literally how we do it, subhanAllah. Now, there are a lot of really cool ways to go about healing trauma. Inshallah, I'll be putting more videos out on this. But again, to my ladies who are watching this, who want to work with someone who actually does this work, please go to the link in my description to learn more about the work that I do. Another thing is, if you like this style video, please comment below, comment any questions you have, inshallah, and like this video so it gets pushed out to other people and they can learn more about healing their trauma, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you so much for watching.